There was no kitchen in her house. There had never been a kitchen in her house. And yet, for 40 years, nobody in that village ever went hungry.
Every funeral in Oguta, Mama Ify's food was there. Every wedding, her food. Every naming ceremony, her food. When the rains failed and the yam barn stood empty, she carried bowls from compound to compound. Nobody asked how. Nobody asked where the food came from. When sickness spread across 3 villages and mothers became too weak to cook, Mama Ify came with soup, with rice, with bread that was still warm.
When hardship swallowed the land and hungry children cried until even the birds abandoned the trees, Mama Ify cooked. She never ran out. Not once. She never asked for one single kobo. She never accepted payment. She never turned anyone away. The people of Oguta had a saying, if Mama Ify's pot is empty, then God himself has gone to sleep. Her pot was never empty. But there was one thing nobody wanted to say out loud. A question that sat at the back of every throat like a fishbone. For 40 years, nobody had ever seen Mama Ify cook. Not once. Not in 40 years. And on the morning she died, when the women entered her compound to prepare her house for mourning, they finally discovered why. Mama Ify was not tall. She was not the kind of woman who commanded a room. If you passed her on the road, you might not even notice her until she laughed. Her laughter began deep inside her. It rolled slowly through her chest, then reached her eyes. And when it reached her eyes, you forgot your own worries. You smiled without knowing why. It felt like standing beside a fire on a cold evening. Warm, safe, familiar. She had a small gap between her front teeth. She smelled of crayfish and fresh uzuza leaves. Always. Even at church, even at funerals. The parish priest once laughed and said, when Mama Ify enters heaven, the angels will start asking for pepper soup. The whole church laughed. So did Mama Ify. The children of Oguta never called her Mama Ify. They called her Mama Anyi, our mother. Even children who still had their own mothers called her that. Because there is one kind of mother, the one who raises her own child. Then there is another kind. The kind whose love becomes too big for one family, too wide for one home, too deep for one heart. Mama Ify belonged to the second kind. She somehow became everybody's mother. If a child cried, she was there. If a widow had no food, she appeared before sunset. If a traveler arrived in Oguta hungry, someone always pointed to Mama Ify's compound. And nobody ever left hungry. People loved her. They trusted her. The way people trust the sunrise. The way they trust the rain to return. But there were little things. Tiny things. The kind you remember only when you cannot sleep. Nobody had ever seen Mama Ify buy food at the market. Not tomatoes, not pepper, not palm oil, not even a single dried fish. The market women noticed. Mama Ify had never bought ingredients from them. Not once. Not in 40 years. She had no helper, no daughter, no apprentice. She carried every bowl herself. Then there was something even stranger. Something people only whispered about. Mama Ify never ate. Not in public, not at weddings, not during funerals, not after church, not even after serving hundreds of people. One afternoon, at a naming ceremony, a young woman called Oguta filled a plate with steaming rice. She smiled and handed it to Mama Ify. Mama Ify smiled back, then gently pushed the plate away. My belly is already full, my daughter. I ate before I came. But Oguta had been there since sunrise. She had watched Mama Ify arrive. She had watched her serve everyone. She had not seen her eat. Not once. People noticed, but nobody asked. Because there are gifts you do not inspect too closely. You take the food, you say thank you, you go home. You sleep with a full stomach, and you do not ask the river where it learned to flow. Mama Ify died on a quiet Harmattan morning, peacefully. The women who found her all said the same thing. She did not look dead. She looked well rested, like someone who had completed a long journey. Her hands rested gently on her chest. A small smile remained on her face. The herbalist came. The pastor came. The imam came. For once, everyone agreed. Mama Ify had lived well, and she had died well. For 3 days, Oguta mourned. Men cried openly. Women sang through their tears. Children carried flowers to her compound. On the 3rd day, they buried her beneath the old mango tree she had planted as a young woman. Then came the 4th day. The women returned to clean her house. One final act of love. Chinyere walked to the back of the compound. She stopped. Ngozi, where is her kitchen? Ngozi looked around, then looked again. There was no kitchen, no hearth, no firewood, no cooking pots, no place where anyone had ever cooked. The two women stood in silence. Neither of them spoke, because in that moment, they realized something impossible. The woman who had fed Oguta for 40 years had no kitchen. For a moment, neither woman spoke. They simply stared. There was no kitchen, no hearth, no firewood, nothing. Then, Chinyere shook her head.
There has to be something.
No.
You're right.
There has to be something.
Search again.
Ngozi nodded. Search again. This time, they searched like detectives. Every room, every box, every corner. Nothing. No cooking pot. No mortar. No pestle. No knife. No serving spoon. No rice. No gari. No palm oil. No dried fish. Not even crumbs. Chinyere climbed onto a stool. She checked the ceiling. Clean. No smoke. No soot. No sign of fire. Chinyere rubbed the wall. Smooth. Clean. Impossible. A house that fed a village should leave a trace. This house left none. Then Ngozi froze. Chinyere, come here. Tiny scratches covered the bedroom wall. Almost invisible, thin lines, grouped in 5s, like someone counting days. Chinyere began counting. 20, 50, 100. Then she stopped. The marks stretched across the wall. Hundreds, then
thousands. Enough to fill 40 years. 1 mark for every day. But counting what? Nobody knew. The missing kitchen was frightening. But somehow, those marks felt worse. Because they knew one thing. Mama Ify had been hiding another secret. And they were getting closer to it. News spread across Oguta before sunset. By afternoon, Mama Ify's compound was full. Men, women, children, everyone asking the same question. Had anybody ever seen Mama Ify cook? Okafor scratched his head. I thought she cooked before I woke up. Amaka shook her head. I thought she cooked after everyone slept. Then Chika spoke, quietly. I grew up beside this compound. I never saw smoke. Not once. The crowd fell silent. Then somebody asked the question nobody wanted to hear. If there was no kitchen, no fire, no cooking pot, what exactly have we been eating for 40 years? Nobody answered. Old man Izowugo slowly stood up. He looked at Mama Ify's house. Then he said, "We have been eating that woman's life. And we called it food because we never wanted to know the price." Nobody argued. Nobody could. For a moment, the compound was silent. Then everything exploded. "What do you mean her life?" a woman shouted. "What are you saying?" Another woman grabbed her head. Wait. If there was no kitchen, then where did the food come from?" A young woman suddenly bent over and vomited into the dust. The crowd jumped back. She wiped her mouth and stared at the empty house. No. Are you saying we've been eating food from spirits?" A murmur swept through the compound. An old woman began crying. Oh God, and her jollof rice was the sweetest jollof rice I ever tasted. A young boy raised his hand nervously. His voice shook. "But I dream about her jollof rice." The crowd turned. The boy swallowed. "I still dream about it. Even last week." A few people laughed. Nobody laughed for long because suddenly it wasn't funny anymore. A trader stepped forward. I saw her carrying pots. I saw her carrying trays. I saw her carrying coolers. Every single day. Another woman pointed towards the house. "Yes, I saw her too. Every morning. Bowls of soup, bowls of rice, moi moi, pepper soup, beans. Where was she bringing them from?" There is no kitchen. A man pushed through the crowd. His face had gone pale. I lived beside this compound for 15 years. I never had a pestle. I never had firewood crackling. I never smelled smoke. I thought she cooked while we slept. But all of us cannot be sleeping at the same time. That sent another wave through the crowd. People began talking over each other. No kitchen, no fire, no pots, no smoke, no ingredients. Then where did the food come from? The question moved through the compound like a sickness. Faster, louder, more frightening each time. Then Chieri looked at the empty doorway of Mama Ify's house, and for the first time since she had known her, she felt afraid. Not of Mama Ify, but of the secret she had carried for 40 years. Then Chinyere lifted her broom. "If we're here, let's finish cleaning." She swept once, then again. Suddenly, knock, a hollow sound. Ngozi. The women knelt immediately. They dug through the clay floor with their hands. Only a few inches down, their fingers touched something hard. A small clay pot. Ancient, hidden, waiting. Chinyere carefully lifted it. Old cloth wrapped around the top. The string crumbled the moment she touched it. Slowly, she opened it and froze. Inside was a tiny wooden carving. A baby, roughly made, not by a craftsman, by someone trying desperately to remember a face. Beside it lay a single dried flower, a burial flower. Chinyere's hands began to shake. Ngozi stepped back, because every woman in Oguta knew what that flower meant, and every woman believed one thing: Mama Ify never had a child. For 40 years, that was the story. But standing inside that room, holding that tiny wooden baby, they realized something terrifying. The story they had believed for 40 years was a lie. And Mama Ify's biggest secret had just begun to reveal itself. They sent for Dibia Nena, the oldest woman in Oguta, 91 years old. When she saw the carved baby, she closed her eyes and sighed, not with shock, with relief. She stretched out her hand. Chinyere placed the carving in her palm. Tears filled the old woman's eyes. Then she whispered, "I have carried this secret for 60 years. I am tired. Sit down." The compound became quiet. You knew her as Mama Ify. I knew her before anyone called her Mama. Before the legend. Before the food. Before the mystery. She was 22. Beautiful. Always laughing. Married to a carpenter called Chike. And she had one son. Nena paused. His name was Obiora. Then her face changed. The famine came. The farms died. The river shrank. And hunger swallowed the land. Obiora was only 6 months old. Mama Ify searched everywhere. She sold everything she owned. But it wasn't enough. Then Nena lowered her head. Obiora died in her arms. Nobody moved. Nobody spoke. She buried him herself, under a tree beside the river. Then she sat there for 3 days, and on the 3rd night, Nena looked toward the river. Everything changed. I followed her. I was young. I thought she wanted to leave this world. But she walked into the river, step by step. The water reached her waist, then her chest. I tried to call her, but I couldn't. My voice disappeared. Then, the river stopped. Not slowed. Stopped. The water became still, like glass. Not a ripple, not a sound. Mama Ify's lips were moving. She wasn't crying. She wasn't praying. She was making a promise. 1 hour later, she walked out, dry. The next morning, she fed the village. And she never stopped. Nena looked around the compound. The river accepted her promise, but it demanded a price. No more children, no husband, no wealth. Nothing could belong to her. Everything had to pass through her hands. Then Nena pointed toward the house. And every meal cost her 1 more day of life. The compound fell silent. The marks on her wall were borrowed days. Every sunrise after she should have been gone, she scratched one mark. 40 years, 14 14,610 marks. 14,610 borrowed days. Nena looked at the crowd, then whispered, "Everyone spent on you."
Nena lifted the little wooden carving. Her hands trembled. She looked at the crowd. Then she said softly, "This is Obiora. She carved him herself, the same week she buried him."
For 60 years, he was the only thing she kept. The only thing. Everything else she gave away. She buried him beneath her bedroom floor. So every morning she woke above her son, and every night she slept above him, always carrying him, always remembering. Nena's voice broke. She held the carving closer. Then she asked, "Do you understand now?" The compound remained silent. Every hungry child she fed, she saw Obiora. Every bowl of soup, every plate of rice, every piece of bread, she was feeding her son again and again and again. Every grieving mother she comforted, she was comforting herself. Every tear she wiped away was a tear she once cried alone. Then Nena looked toward the empty house and whispered, "The kitchen was never in that house." A long pause. The kitchen was her grief. She turned her pain into food. She turned her loss into hope. She turned heartbreak into survival. One child was gone, but because of him, an entire village lived. And she never asked for thanks, not once. She only kept her promise, day after day, year after year, for 40 years, until the river called her home. Nobody spoke. Chinyere lowered her head and began to weep. Then Ogozi, then Okafor. Soon, the whole compound was weeping. Men, women, children, all of them, because at last they understood. For 40 years, they had eaten her love, and they had never known the cost. Not until now. Not until she was gone. And in that moment, Oguta finally understood what Mama Ify had truly given them. The compound remained silent. People wiped their tears, but Nena was not finished. She looked around slowly, from face to face. Then she asked, "Do any of you know how old Mama Ify really was?" Nobody answered. A few people exchanged glances. Finally, Okafor spoke. 60. Maybe 65. Several people nodded. 70 at most. Mama Ify gave a sad smile. Then she shook her head. No. The crowd became still. She was 93. Gasps swept through the compound. No. Impossible. That's not true. Nena nodded. It is. She was 93. The villagers looked at one another, trying to remember, trying to picture Mama Ify. And suddenly, they noticed something strange, something they had never noticed before. Mama Ify had never really changed, not much. The children remembered her looking almost the same when they were small. Their parents remembered the same thing. Even the old men remembered. Year after year, decade after decade, Mama Ify grew older, but not the way other people grew older. Slowly, almost reluctantly, as if time was struggling to catch her. Then Nena spoke again. "Do you know why?" Nobody answered. because nobody wanted to. The river kept her. The wind moved through the compound. The day Obiora died, the day she made her promise, she should have followed him soon after. Several women covered their mouths, but the river refused. It said no. As long as she fed others, she would remain. As long as hungry children ate, as long as empty stomachs became full, as long as she kept giving, she would keep breathing. The villagers stared at the old woman, unable to speak. Nena pointed toward the marks on the bedroom wall. Those scratches were not just days, they were warnings. Every mark was a sunrise she was never supposed to see. The silence deepened. 40 years. 14,610 mornings. 14,610 borrowed days. Then Nena's voice became softer. Do you know the saddest part? Nobody moved. She knew. Every single day. The crowd froze. Every morning she woke up, she knew she was living time that did not belong to her. She knew one day the river would come back. She knew the promise would end. A tear rolled down Nena's cheek. But she never stopped. Not when she was tired, not when she was lonely, not when her heart still ached for Obiora, not when nobody thanked her. She kept going because somebody somewhere was hungry. Nena looked toward Mama Ify's empty doorway. Then she whispered, "That is why she smiled so much." The villagers looked up. She was not smiling because life was easy. She was smiling because every day she woke up was one more day she could help somebody. The compound fell completely silent, and for the first time, the villagers understood why Mama Ify's smile had always felt different. It was the smile of a woman who knew every sunrise was a gift and chose to spend every one of them on other people. They buried the carved figure of Obiora beside her mother, under the mango tree, together, the way they should have been from the beginning. The people of Oguta built a small stone at the riverbank where she had made her covenant. They carved her name into it, and beneath her name, Obiora, and beneath both names, 3 words: she fed us. The marks on her bedroom wall, they left them. They did not paint over them. They did not wipe them away. 14,610 marks. 1 for every borrowed day she spent feeding people who never knew the cost. The elders of Oguta still say this: the woman who gives everything is often invisible while she is giving. You do not see her tired hands. You do not count her sleepless nights. You do not ask what she gave up because you are too busy receiving. You only see her when she is gone, in the empty chair, in the silent compound, in the hunger that returns, in the painful realization of how much was held together by hands you never thanked. Look around you. There is a Mama Ify in your life. Perhaps she lives in your village. Perhaps she lives in your family. Perhaps she is sending money home from a country that has never truly welcomed her. Yet somehow, there is always enough. Perhaps she cooks with almost nothing, yet everyone around her eats. Perhaps she has never told you what it costs her. You may never know her kitchen, but you will always know her food. And that food has a name. It is called love. And it is the most expensive thing in the world. If someone like Mama Ify is still in your life, thank her today, before the kitchen is empty, before the river calls her home. If this story touched something inside you, leave the name of your Mama Ify in the comments. Let her be seen, even here, even now. And if you love African folk tales that stay with you long after they are over, subscribe, because there are more stories waiting. Stories that remind us where we come from, who we are, and the people whose sacrifices made our lives possible. Until the next story, may your pot never run empty.